are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Wednesday, December 11th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We are going to take a look at the NFL draft order, where it currently stands at this moment. We'll also talk about in the second part of the show the Giants and their most recent loss to the New Orleans Saints. We'll talk about the banner that flew over MetLife Stadium and get into that discussion. We'll talk about the Buccaneers and their win over the Raiders and how the NFC South has now changed. The Buccaneers now hold the lead over the Falcons after the Falcons lost yet another game to the Vikings. Then we'll talk about the Seahawks and the Cardinals game because that was a big NFC West matchup. Seahawks picked up the win. They sweep the season series between them and the Cardinals. And we'll talk about Zach Charbonnet's performance in that game as well. And then I'll get into talking about my power rankings this week, ranking my top 5 teams after Week 14. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the NFL draft. So, there's still time before we get to that point. But I did want to take a look at the draft order, where it kind of sits at the moment as we wind down here in the regular season. So right now, you got the Giants and the Raiders both tied at 2-11, and they will be picking 1 and 2 at this moment. And both of those teams, without question, are going to take a quarterback. Whether it's going to be the Giants taking a quarterback at 1, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, or vice versa with the Raiders. Now, Shedeur Sanders, it seems like he wants to become a Raider. So, with some of the social media posts of his. But that's what those two teams are doing, is taking a quarterback. The Raiders, they got a lot of work to do. The Giants have a lot of work to do. I think the Raiders, to be honest, have more work to do than the Giants, because I do think that, the Giants have pieces on defense. They have Malik Neighbors as a cornerstone on the offense. Tyrone Tracy as a running back. They do have pieces. Now, the Raiders as well, they have pieces, but I think the Giants are maybe a step ahead of the Raiders. But that's not really saying that much. I mean, the Raiders do have Max Crosby, and then you have Brock Bowers on the other side on offense, but they need more than just that. So they got a lot of work to do, and, the Giants as well. And the other thing, too, is who's going to be making the selections? Because it's possible the Giants could let go of Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen at the end of the season because they're not going to win another game, it seems. But that's something that I'm curious to see. Are both of those guys going to stay? Is one of them going to stay? Because it could be Brian Daboll just leaving, and you have Joe Schoen still making the pick and selecting the next head coach. Now, looking at the two teams in their remaining schedules, the Giants have the Ravens, the Falcons, the Colts, and the Eagles. There's not one win left on that schedule. I mean, the Falcons have not been playing great. Kirk Cousins has not been playing well, but I think that would be a get-right game for him. And then the Colts, they've been playing better. Anthony Richardson has been playing better. Colts should be able to win that game. And then, of course, you have the Ravens this upcoming week and the Eagles last game of the season, which they could have everything locked up, but Eagles should still probably win that game. And then as for the Raiders, their remaining schedule plays out like this. You have the Falcons coming up on Monday Night Football. There's a doubleheader on Monday night. One game's on ABC, the other's on ESPN. Falcons, I think, should win that and get back on track. Then you got the Jaguars at home. That's a game the Raiders could win. So if that happens and the Giants lose out, then the Giants will definitely have the number one pick. Yeah, because they got the Jaguars, they got the Saints. I mean, who knows who's going to be playing quarterback? We'll talk about that because Derek Carr got hurt in the game on Sunday against the Giants. So those are two games the Raiders could possibly win. And then you got the Chargers the final week of the regular season. The Chargers are probably going to still be playing their starters because they want to make sure that they lock down one of those wild card spots. So right now, I think the Giants should get the number one overall pick. Now, looking at how the rest of the draft order plays out, you got the Patriots at 3, Panthers at 4, Jaguars at 5, Titans at 6, Jets at 7, Browns at 8. There's a lot of 3-10 teams. And some of these teams I did not expect to be 3-10 at this point. The Browns I didn't expect to be 3-10. The Jets, the Jaguars. I thought those teams were going to have better records at this point. 2 of them I had making the playoffs. Well, actually, no, I didn't have the Browns making the playoffs. I had the Jets making the playoffs. Now, what are those teams going to need? Well, when you look at the Patriots, they're not going to need a quarterback. Drake May looks like he's going to be the guy. The Panthers is interesting because Bryce Young has played better as of late. So if that continues, do you run it back with him another year? So this could be a scenario where maybe they take a corner. Maybe they take, I know Will Johnson from Michigan. That's a player that is highly regarded going into this draft. I mean, I think they need more than just a corner. They do need a lot of help. Maybe they take an offensive lineman, another playmaker. The Patriots, I think, are going playmaker. They could end up taking Travis Hunter with their pick. And then on top of that, they're looking to try to get T. Higgins. So if you get Travis Hunter and T. Higgins for Drake May, you're cooking. So that's a possibility there. The Titans, the Jets, and the Browns are interesting. The Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence is their guy. They're not going to take a quarterback. Maybe they take an offensive lineman. Maybe they take somebody on the defense. But the Titans, the Jets, and the Browns, 6 through 8, those are teams that I think could be taking quarterbacks. I would lean more towards the Jets and the Browns doing it. The Titans, I don't know. Are they going to give Will Levis another year? He was playing better, and then Sunday happened. They only put up 6 points, and now he got hurt again. So it's possible that maybe the Titans look to take a quarterback. There's also a chance, you never know, that teams trade up. They could do that. I think the Jets should take a quarterback, regardless if Aaron Rodgers comes back or not, because you need to have a future. And Aaron Rodgers, whether he's on the team or not, you need to prioritize getting a quarterback, I think. Because you got receivers, you got a running back. The offensive line, of course, could still use work, even though they do have some good pieces on the line. Defense, I mean, you could go with a defensive player, but I do think quarterback is the necessity for the Jets going into this draft. And then you got the Bears at 9. That, I think, is offensive line. That's a team that I definitely think should take an offensive lineman with their first pick. And then the Saints are at 10. That's another team. Could they, maybe trade up, try to get a quarterback? The Bengals are at 11. They're not taking a quarterback. They're probably going to go with a defensive player. Cowboys, they're not going quarterback. They probably go, a defensive player. Possibly. I don't want to keep going down the list here. Dolphins, maybe somebody on defense. The Colts could be somebody on defense as well because they got a lot of young weapons. They got Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Falcons, maybe another playmaker. It's going to be interesting how it all plays out. And obviously we're going to see, a bunch of mock drafts and things like that, player rankings. So it's coming up before we know it. But as of right now, looking at least on the mock draft on tankathon.com, the Raiders are projected to get Shedeur Sanders. Giants would get Cameron Ward. Patriots would get Travis Hunter. At least on this one here, they got Mason Graham from Michigan going to Carolina. Will Johnson, who I mentioned before, from Michigan, going to Jacksonville. Teteroa McMillan from Arizona going to the Titans. They got the Jets drafting Abdul Carter, edge rusher from Penn State. So we'll see. They actually have Genti going to the Bengals. I do think they got to go defense though with that first pick. See, I could see the Cowboys taking Genti with the 12th pick because, maybe they want to draft a running back. I mean, Rico Dowdle has run the football better as of late, although it did go against the Giants and the Bengals recently. So I could see the Cowboys doing that, but I feel like they need to address other areas, those two teams. The Bengals on defense, I mean, even the Cowboys, you can maybe make the argument they should address defensive side or maybe go offensive lineman. That's just my thoughts there. But that's really what I wanted to focus on. Right now it's between the Giants and the Raiders for the first overall pick. And a lot of these teams, behind them, the Patriots have a quarterback. The Jaguars have a quarterback. The Bears. Some of the other teams, they could trade up to try to get somebody. But it's going to be the Giants and the Raiders picking 1 and 2. I mean, I don't see the Giants winning another game. Raiders, you can make the argument they could win another game, whether it's against Jacksonville. We'll have to wait and see. But let me know what you guys think. Who will pick at the number 1 spot? And who do you think should get picked? Is it going to be Cam Ward? Is it going to be Shedeur Sanders? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break of the show now. And then when we come back, we will talk about the Giants again. We'll talk about their most recent loss to the Saints and also talk about the banner that flew over MetLife Stadium. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Giants once again, talk about their most recent loss to the Saints and how that kind of unfolded. And, yeah, pretty low-scoring game. And I did originally have the Giants with the points in this game, but then I changed it to the Saints. And the Giants ended up covering anyways. Because they scored their only touchdown that they scored, they made it 14-9. Then they wanted to make it a 3-point game, so they went for 2, and Drew Lock throws it. It gets deflected in the air, and there's all these Saints players around the ball to knock it down or intercept it, but somehow it finds Malik Neighbors, he catches it, and that makes it 14-11. But it was a very ugly game, very low scoring. Derek Carr got hurt in this game, actually, like I said. And then on top of that, you had the banner fly over MetLife Stadium, which said, I think it has the exact message in the article that I have up here, but it basically just told John Mara, enough is enough. You know, you need to end this dumpster fire, basically. And, you know, the media tried to get John Mara to comment, and he declined to comment. Now, this also actually happened in this article. It talks about how it happened in the 1970s when fans expressed their displeasure with the banner that read, 15 years of lousy football, we've had enough. So, yeah, it's basically the same thing. Now, the Giants have had a couple of years where they made the playoffs in between this horrible stretch of football, but they've been blips on the radar. You know, what happened after the Giants made the playoffs in 2016? They had a terrible record. What happened in 2022? Or 2023 after the Giants made the playoffs? They went 6-11. Now, you know, they played better down the stretch, but they were not a good football team last year. And now they're even worse this year. They're now 2-11. They have now missed the playoffs in 11 of their past 13 seasons. And this could be the worst season by far. Because even worse than Ben McAdoo, even worse than Joe Judge. It's unbelievable. Brian Dable said when talking about the plane that flew over, look, we won 2 games, I'm not happy either. The energy from him has just been taken away. And at the end of the game, he tried to like throw off his headset, his hat, and his glasses all at the same time. It's just not going well. It's not going well. He also said, I'm disappointed. We have 2 wins, so just going to keep on grinding it out, trying to keep developing these young players, get ready for next week. You know, there's no substance to that answer. But, I mean, what do you want him to say? You know, I mean, the team has 2 wins. It's been the same thing every week. So, yeah, this is exactly what it said. It said, the banner said, Mr. Mara, enough. Please fix this dumpster fire. You know, it's just... It's been horrible. Giants had 12 penalties for 112 yards in Sunday's contest. They had a holding penalty on a 56-yard punt return by Marset. So that touchdown got called back. And then this is the funny part. So the Giants actually had an opportunity to tie this game and send it to overtime, right? And it was pretty much a chip shot field goal, right? It was going to be a 35-yarder. All right, so maybe not a chip shot, but still a 35-yard field goal. Graham Gano's going to kick, and he has not been good these last couple of years. Giants got to get a new kicker. This is from the Saints 17, and it ends up getting blocked. I mean, it's unbelievable how this team continues to find new ways to lose games. Now, Giant fans want them to lose games because they want the higher draft pick and they want to get their franchise quarterback. I get that. And it makes sense because quarterback is the biggest need for this team right now. And we just talked about it in the last part of the show here. But it's just amazing how they make you think they're going to win. Now, it hasn't been the case a lot this year, but there's been plenty of times over this horrible stretch of seasons where they make you think they're going to win, or they make you think they're going to come back, and then something like this happens where there's a blocked field goal at the end of the game. And Drew Lock was not good. 21 of 49, 227 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. He had 59 yards on the ground, 45 yards on the ground by Tyrone Tracy. Malik Neighbors had 5 receptions for 79 yards. Daniel Bellinger, 5 for 45. Darius Slayton, only 2 receptions for 27 yards. Jalen Hyatt. I think the Giants should trade him, honestly. Try to get something for him because I don't know how he's going to... I mean, I guess maybe with Darius Slayton leaving after this year, you keep him around, but Jalen Hyatt's been a disappointment. But I think it's also because the Giants' offense is not very good. And then the Giants' defense, only 2 sacks on the day. As for the Saints, Derek Carr, before he got hurt, he went 20 of 31 for 219 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Alvin Kamara had 44 yards on the ground. Kendre Miller had 32 yards on the ground and a touchdown. I mean, him in the pile, they pushed him in for a touchdown. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had 4 for 51. Juwan Johnson had 4 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown. Foster Moreau had 2 for 40. Saints defense, they had 2 sacks on the day of Drew Lock. Actually, Groupie, their kicker, missed a couple field goals too. So, but I thought the Saints were going to cover in this game just because, they were down. The Giants were down Dexter Lawrence. I don't think Deontay Banks was playing. It's just, I thought they'd at least cover. And it looked like they were going to, but then the Giants, of course, have the backdoor with the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. Giants actually had more total yards than the Saints in this game, and they both averaged around the same when it comes to yards per play. But I did want to talk about Derek Carr briefly. So he did end up getting hurt. He landed awkwardly on the sidelines, taking a hit. And he's going to miss the next few games. I believe it's because of a hand injury. So, yeah, he suffered a major fracture in non-throwing hand. He's likely done for the season. This is a couple of days ago. This is reported by Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissaro. Sustained a significant fracture in his left hand. He'll miss multiple weeks, and it's almost certainly season-ending. Yeah, because, at this point, it's a lost season for the Saints. If he's able to come back like the last game of the season, are you really going to want to bring him back? No. So, it's been a rough couple of years for Derek Carr. It's not what Saints fans are hoping for. Saints are a team that, I did talk about them in the last segment. They're going to have to go in a different direction, I think. You still got some veteran players on this team, but it's just not going to happen. And we will see what happens. But, just getting an update on my phone about the Yankees trying to get somebody from the Astros. They end up pulling that off. That would get me very excited. But, we'll see what happens there. At least one New York team is, outside of Sunday, because Sunday I was upset. But, yesterday they signed a pitcher. That was good. And they signed Max Fried from the Braves, is very good. And we'll see what they do. They got to do more, but at least they're keeping me sane because the Giants. Well, I shouldn't. When it comes to the Giants, though, I've been checked out, so they can't hurt me. It's just, it's sad to see what the franchise has become, because this used to be a team that you respected. They're not. They're a laughingstock right now, and I'm hoping that they draft the right quarterback. I hope they do keep Brian Dable and Joe Shane. Let them draft one more time. Maybe you bring in some more free agents and see what this team does next year. And if it's another season like this, then they're gone. But for right now, I think they should keep them. So, but when you look at the schedule coming up, there's no more wins. There's no more wins. Could they maybe beat the Falcons? Listen, Kirk Cousins has not been good. So, if the defense can force some turnovers and they can get after him, you never know. The Colts, I mean, Anthony Richardson can turn the ball over. But I just, it's not happening. Those are the two games that I could see, like, you could maybe say, maybe. And maybe the Eagles with, their backups playing, they're not winning another game. It's not happening. It's not happening. But that's where we're at. That's where we're at with New York football. Both teams. I mean, the Jets at least, they were winning, and you thought, all right, maybe they're going to end their losing streak. Didn't happen. Aaron Rodgers threw for 300 yards. Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson both had over 100 yards each. You thought, okay, maybe they have a chance. They, of course, lost. But the Giants, I thought for a moment maybe they were going to pull it off, but didn't happen. They're going to get the number 1 overall pick. So, before we go to break, let me know what you guys think, though, about this game, about the message that the Giants fans have for ownership. Let me know in the comments. Before we go to break, like I said, just want to remind you guys to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will discuss the NFC South. We'll talk about the Buccaneers and their win over the Raiders, and where that division currently stands now, as the Bucs are now sitting on top of that division. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're now getting into talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their win over the Raiders, as well as just, updating you guys on the NFC South. And the Bucs, they're back in first place. They are back in first place. It took some time. I didn't know if it was going to be possible. But they currently now hold a 1-game lead over the Falcons. And the Falcons just continue to lose games. They have now lost 4 in a row. I do think that they should win on Monday. And then you got the Giants after that. So they have an opportunity to at least get themselves back over 500 with the next 2 games of 2 teams that I just talked about. And then as for the Bucs, the Chargers game is going to be tough. But I still think, in my opinion, the Bucs will win the division. I think they'll get to at least 10 wins, and I think that's going to be enough. The Falcons, they can't afford to lose another game. Now, they do play the Commanders in Week 17. That is going to be a very tough game. And bottom line is this. Kirk Cousins has to play better. He has to play better. He has not thrown a touchdown pass in quite some time. Now he has 17 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. It's not good. And, you go back to a month ago, maybe a little bit after that, people saying Kirk Cousins has had a better year than Aaron Rodgers. Listen, the Falcons still have a chance to make the playoffs, but, and I know Kirk Cousins had a game where he threw for 500 yards, but overall, Aaron Rodgers has had the better season. He has. He's got 20 touchdowns to 8 picks. He has not been turning the ball over at an alarming rate like Kirk Cousins has. And Kirk Cousins hasn't thrown a touchdown pass in a month. And like I said, the Falcons, they brought him in to get them over the hump. And right now, he's not doing that. Now, I think maybe going into next year, another year removed from the injury, and it could be the same thing with Aaron Rodgers too, if he decides to play, even though Aaron Rodgers is older. Another year removed from the injury, Kirk Cousins will play better. Now, is he going to have that opportunity to do that with the Falcons, or is it going to be with another team? Because what if the Falcons say, if they end up missing out on the playoffs, what if they say, all right, well, we're going to go to Michael Penix next year, and we're going to try to move off of Kirk Cousins. Now, I think Kirk Cousins would get another shot and go to another team. Teams are always looking for quarterbacks, so, he's going to find another job, no problem. But is he going to be doing it in Atlanta? It depends on how the season ends. I mean, if the Falcons win the division, they go to the playoffs, they make, they win a playoff game, then I think Kirk buys himself more time and gets another year. But if they end up missing the playoffs, Falcons might have to think about it. I don't know. That's just me. Anything can happen. But they still have time to get this season back on the right track. They got 2 very winnable games. The Bucs have a tough game with the Chargers this week. So, we'll see what happens. But going back to the Bucs, though, they jumped out to a 14-0 lead against the Raiders. And it looked like it was going to be a blowout. Now, it ended up being a 2-score game at the end anyways. But it looked like it was going to be a blowout. They were going to win 30-7 or something. But then the Raiders, started to, climb back into the game. They got it to 14-10. The Raiders had a lot of missed opportunities in this game. Baker Mayfield threw a pick in the first quarter, and then immediately the Raiders fumbled, and the Bucs got it back. But then, they made it 14-7. They got on the board. Aiden O'Connell had a rushing touchdown, a QB sneak for a touchdown. And then later they kicked a field goal, so that made it 14-10. Then Baker Mayfield threw a pick. Raiders didn't do anything with that. Actually, that was towards the end of the first half. So, they didn't have enough time to really do anything. Raiders then threw a pick in the second half. Bucs didn't do anything with it. But then the Bucs ended up outscoring the Raiders in the fourth quarter, 14-3. And that was really all the points in the second half. And they picked up the win. Like I said, the Raiders had some opportunities, but, it just ended up not going their way. They actually beat the Bucs in time of possession. But Baker Mayfield, a couple of turnovers. I do worry about that going forward, but, he continues to play very good football. 28 touchdowns to 13 picks he has on the season. He has put together a nice season. And that's, you're missing Chris Godwin. You were missing Mike Evans. You at least got Mike Evans back. So, give him credit for how well he's played. The Bucs ran the ball for over 150 yards, 152 yards. Bucky Irving got hurt in this game. Rashad White, he ended up, picking up the slack. 90 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Sean Tucker had a 34-yard run in this game. He finished with 47 yards on the ground. Baker had 12 on the ground. Cade Otton was their leading receiver, 3 receptions for 70 yards. Mike Evans, 4 for 69. Sterling Shepard, 4 for 63. They got Jalen McMillan going, their rookie. 5 receptions for 59 yards and 2 touchdowns. That looks good for at least one of my dynasty teams going forward. Bucs defense had 2 sacks on the day. And then as for the Raiders, Aiden O'Connell went 11 of 19 for 140 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. He got hurt in this game. Got carted off the field. It looked like it was going to be season ending, but then apparently there's a possibility he could play. But we'll have to keep an eye on that. If not, it's going to be Desmond Ridder. Because, he suffered a knee injury. Looked like it was season ending, but he could play week 15. They thought it was going to be, a significant knee injury because they did put him in a cast, got carted off the field, but on Monday it revealed he only had a bone bruise. So that's good. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But like I said, if it's not Aiden O'Connell, we could very well see Desmond Ridder playing against his former team on Monday when the Raiders and the Falcons play against each other. That'd actually be very interesting, seeing Desmond Ridder go up against his former team, and then he pulls off the upset, and then, possibly knocks the Falcons out of the playoffs. Well, I mean, the Falcons still would have a chance, but, they need the Bucs to lose. Which is definitely possible with them going up against the Chargers, like I said. But, and then for the rest of the stats here, Sincere McCormick was their leading rusher. He had 78 yards on the ground. He averaged 5.2 yards per carry. Had a 29-yard run in this game. The leading receiver actually was Michael Mayer, the other tight end. 7 receptions for 68 yards. Jacoby Myers had 7 for 67. Brock Bowers, 3 for 49 in this game. And the Raiders' defense had 4 sacks of Baker Mayfield. But, like I said, like where the Bucs are headed right now, as of right now, they currently hold the 4 seed, which is probably what they're going to end up getting. Whatever team comes out of the NFC South, that's what they're going to end up getting. And what's unfortunate for whoever wins the NFC South, you're probably going to have to go up against one of these NFC North teams in the Packers or the Vikings. Right now it would be the Vikings, who are 11-2 on the season. So, but that's usually what happens though as of late with the NFC South. Is, they finish as, the last division leader. And, now you're going to be going up against a wild card team that, could still win the division. What happens if the Vikings overtake the Lions for the division? Then you got to play the Lions in the first round. Now, the Bucs are the only team that has defeated the Lions this year. So, you never know. I mean, I think the Lions are winning their division. The Bucs right now are sitting in a good spot. But we'll see what happens, though. With this division. But like I said, Kirk Cousins has got to play better. And I think you got a couple games to get right here. I mean, even the Commanders, their defense is not great. It definitely has played better than I thought it would going into the year. But he's got to play better. If he doesn't play better, they got no shot. They could keep running it with Bijan Robinson, who's been great this year. But Kirk Cousins has got to play better. And throw a touchdown pass. I know. I don't. It's surprising with how poorly he has played. But then again, you could say, well, he's coming off a significant injury. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think though about this division. Who do you think ultimately wins it? Right now, I think it's tilting in the Bucs' favor at the moment. They do have a tough game coming up with the Chargers, as I keep saying. And then your final 3 games, you're in Dallas, and then you got the Panthers and the Saints at home, which protect your home turf. The Panthers have been playing better. The Saints are banged up. So I think they should win those 2 games. I think they should beat Dallas in Dallas. That could be a little bit of a tough game, though. But I think ultimately they get to 10 wins and they make the playoffs once again. And then for the Falcons, I think it really comes down to that game against the Commanders. If they don't win that game, then probably got no shot. But, and you know what? I think the Bucs might lose to the Chargers. So that would help the Falcons out tremendously. But we will see what happens. It's gonna be interesting how it goes. But let me know what you guys think. Who wins the division? Let me know in the comments. When we come back from our next break, we will discuss another division race that's going to be close, and that is the NFC West. Because right now the Seahawks are in first place, and if you were to tell me that at the beginning of the year, that at this point the Seahawks would be the team that would be in first place, the team that I think I had in last place in the division, I probably wouldn't have believed you. Actually, I think I had them in third. I have to go back and look. Because at the end of the year, I'm going to go back and look at, a lot of the predictions that I had before the season started record-wise and just kind of break that all down and how accurate I was. Because I'll tell you right now, I was more wrong than I was right when looking at how this year has gone. And look, that's fine. It's not the end of the world, but there's definitely a few teams that we're going to go back to and, talk about the records and say, man, I was dead wrong. So we will get into that at a later time. But the Seahawks right now are a team that, I was wrong about. So we'll talk about this game. We'll talk about the performance of Zach Charbonnet as well, because he had himself a day. So yeah, that's what we're going to get to when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the Seahawks-Cardinals game from Sunday. That was a big matchup in the NFC West, and we'll talk about how that game unfolded. And the Seahawks got the win. They have now swept the season series between the Cardinals and themselves. I thought the Cardinals, maybe being at home, they would maybe get this win. They did get off to a good start. They went right down the field and scored a touchdown on their first drive. But after that, the Seahawks kind of took over. Kyler Murray did not play well in this game. Had a couple of interceptions that kind of led to the Seahawks, capitalizing on those. There were no punts to start off the first quarter. You had a touchdown by the Cardinals. They went 6 plays, 70 yards, and Kyler Murray connected with Michael Wilson for a 41-yard touchdown. So, yeah, that got them off to a good start. Then the Seahawks, they went down the field, put together a 7-minute drive. They answered with the field goal. Jason Myers, a 20-yarder. Then Kyler threw a pick. That led to a Seahawks touchdown. Geno Smith connected with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's continued to have a good season. 19-yard touchdown. So, yeah, that put them up by 3. Then Kyler threw another pick, and that led to another Seahawks touchdown. That was Charbonnet's first touchdown of the game from 1 yard out. So, yeah, that made it 17-7. But then the Cardinals responded. They kicked a field goal at Chad Ryland from 28 yards out. Then the Seahawks went up 24-10 later in the second quarter. Charbonnet, a 51-yard run, and that was the score at the half. Then the Seahawks made it 27-10. Jason Myers' 36-yard field goal. And then you had a touchdown by the Cardinals. Kyler Murray, a little shuffle pass to James Conner for a 2-yard touchdown on 3rd and goal. So, yeah, that made it 27-18. But then the Cardinals later in the fourth quarter, they missed a field goal. Seahawks kicked another field goal to make it 30-18. And that was all she wrote. They improved to 8-5 on the season. The Cardinals dropped to 6-7. Like I said, Kyler Murray, 2 picks in this game. He went 25 of 38 for 259 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 90 yards on the ground by James Conner, another 16 by Kyler. Trey Benson had 15 yards on the ground. Trey McBride, 7 receptions for 70 yards. Michael Wilson, 2 for 57 and a touchdown. Marvin Harrison Jr., 4 for 49. It's been kind of quiet in recent weeks. Did have the touchdown last week against the Vikings, but has not had over 100 yards receiving since October 27th against the Dolphins. So they got to get him going. James Conner, he had 32 receiving yards and a touchdown. Cardinals defense, no sacks of Geno Smith in this game. And then as for Geno Smith, 24-30, 233 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. And they were without Kenneth Walker in this game. And Zach Charbonnet, he really stepped up when they needed him to. So he ended up finishing on the day, over 100 yards rushing. He had 134 yards rushing, 22 carries, and he had 2 touchdowns on the day. They have a nice duo between him and Kenneth Walker. Now, if you can get Kenneth Walker back, which they will at some point, that gives teams, opposing defenses, a tough time. Seahawks actually finished in total. They had 176 yards and 2 touchdowns. Well, the 2 by Charbonnet, but still. They had almost 200 yards rushing in this game. And, Geno Smith, look, he hasn't been great this year. But, look, they're getting the job done. They're getting by. They're in first place. And not many people would have expected that going into this season. But I also wanted to highlight Jackson Smith-Njigba because he has put together a nice season as well. He scored yet another touchdown on the year. He had 82 yards receiving. DK Metcalf only had 49 yards receiving. I'm trying to pull up his stats for the season, but CBS doesn't want to cooperate with me. It just continues to load. But the Seahawks, they have a ton of talent on this team. And, I think Mike McDonald definitely deserves some consideration for Coach of the Year because I didn't think the Seahawks, like I said, would be in this position at this point. But he's done a great job. He really has. And they have a chance to win the division. So, they still got some, games with the, they got the Rams coming up, and you got the Packers coming up this weekend, which is a huge game for them. And we got to see what happens tomorrow night because you got the 49ers and the Rams going at it. That's a big game for both teams. So, it's going to be setting down the stretch how some of these divisional races go. But now that CBS finally loaded, so Jackson Smith-Njigba, 75 receptions on the season. He has 911 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. He's going to finish with over 1,000 yards. This has been a solid sophomore season for him. Last year, he only had 628 receiving yards, and he had 4 touchdowns. So, he's going to be a good player for them, as it looks. So, but yeah, tough loss for the Cardinals, though. Kyler Murray, like I said, did not play well in this game. And, the Cardinals still have a chance to, save their season. But when you look at, the NFC West now, the Seahawks are 2 games up on them. They're 1 game up on the Rams, and the Rams already beat them head-to-head. I think that's what it might come down to. It might come down to the Rams and the Seahawks the final week of the season. And the Seahawks, they beat the Niners. They beat the Cardinals twice. So they're sitting in a good spot. They are sitting in a very good spot. They're actually 5-1 on the road this year. They have a losing record at home. They're 5-1. That's impressive. And their loss, where is their loss on the road? That came against the Lions. So, there's no surprise there. And they lost that game 42-29. So, but yeah, 5-1 on the road is impressive. And, that makes you a dangerous team going into the playoffs if you have a good road record. But I don't think the Seahawks are going to make a deep playoff run, in my opinion, if they do make it. But you never know. You got 3 out of the 4 NFC North teams probably making the playoffs. So you might run into one of them. And they are going to be running into one of them this week when they take on the Packers. But yeah, the Seahawks, they have the Packers, the Vikings, and the Bears. Those are their next 3 games. And then they got the Rams to finish off the season. That is a tough stretch for them. I think they should be able to beat the Bears. It's probably going to come down to that game against the Rams. That's what it's gearing up to be. The 49ers, if they can win on Thursday, that would be huge for them. 49ers, though, have a lot of tough games coming up. I've gone over their schedule a million times, too. But they're not done yet. Looking at the wild card, though, for the Commanders, they got to make sure they don't slip up. Because, Rams are 2 games back of them, and then you got, the Cardinals and the 49ers and the Falcons all at 6 and 7. And the Falcons play the Commanders. So, the Commanders at least have the tiebreaker over the Cardinals. They didn't play the Niners this year. So, we'll see how it goes. But it's going to be some exciting football down the stretch. Good. Like I said, good for the Seahawks. Exceeding, people's expectations for them. Because actually, I think I might have had them at 7 and 10. I think I had the Cardinals maybe finishing in last, and then I had the Seahawks finishing in third at 7 and 10. I'm gonna have to go back and look. So that's still possible that they could finish. Actually, no, that's not possible. Never mind. They're at 8 wins. What am I saying? They could end up losing. It's possible they end up losing out, and going 8-9, but I don't think that's gonna happen. I think they probably get to. They could get to 9 or 10 wins. But between them and the Rams, I would probably lean towards the Rams right now with how well they're playing offensively. It's going to be a tough game for them tomorrow night against the Niners. But, I do like the Rams to keep pace with the Seahawks and then maybe knock them off that final week of the season to take the division. Puka Nacua was unbelievable on Sunday. Matthew Stafford has been playing such good football since, he's gotten his top 2 weapons back. His numbers look more respectable. Because the Rams, they have the 49ers this week, then they have the Jets, and then they have the Cardinals and the Seahawks at home. So I like them to at least get to 10 wins on the season. And I think 10 wins might get you the NFC West. And like I said, the Seahawks, they got to deal with the Packers and the Vikings. So it's probably going to come down to that. I really do think it's going to come down to that last game. But we will have to wait and see on that. It should be fun, though. Should be fun. But let me know what you guys think about this game. Do you guys think that the Cardinals are done after this loss? I think this probably means they are done. Again, you still got a chance, but I'd probably lean towards that being the case, them being done here for the division. And, let me know what you guys think about the Seahawks. How far do you think they could go in the playoffs if they do make it? Let me know in the comments. So when we come back from our final break of the show, we will get into my power rankings for this week, list my top 5 teams after week 14. You might be a little disappointed with how the rankings are this week, but we will get into that when we come back. And it's just, we're moving on to week 15. We're in the final quarter of the season. Season has gone fast, and hoping that for myself that the fantasy playoffs go well, because that's starting. I do need to win this week in my main league to make the playoffs. I'm nervous about it. I want to make it because I want to avenge my playoff loss from last year, when I lost by a point, and I had, the best team that I drafted in that league, arguably. This team that I have right now, though, it has the potential to win the whole thing. It does, but it also has the potential to just not make the playoffs, because there have been so many weeks where I'll drop over 130, and then there'll be other weeks where I'll drop under 100 points, and no in between. It's weird, but that's fantasy football for you. So yeah, when we come back from our final break, we'll get into the power rankings. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about my power rankings for this week, ranking my top 5 teams after Week 14. So let's jump right into that. And I did say you might be a little bit disappointed by how the rankings are, and I will explain at the end. Well, you'll kind of figure it out by the end if you've been paying attention. So we got the Steelers at 5. Another win. This team just doesn't lose. Well, they did lose to the Browns, a few weeks ago, but still, I mean, they're 10-3. Who expected the Steelers to be 10-3 at this point? I mean, I expected them to finish with a winning record, but not, 10-3, and we still got 4 games to go. Mike Tomlin, once again, not going to have a losing season. Russell Wilson, he's been playing really well since they made the switch. And you got the defense with TJ Watt. It's just this team, and they won on Sunday without George Pickens, and he actually might not play this week against the Eagles. So that's going to be a tough loss there. But they were able to still figure it out without him. Mike Williams made some big plays. The running game worked. Pat Freiermuth has been getting more involved. He's going to have to continue to step up in the absence of George Pickens. They got to use Pat Freiermuth more because Pat Freiermuth is a good weapon to have. But this team is playing good football right now. This is a good football team. Like I said, they can beat anybody and they can lose to anybody. And this is really the toughest part of their schedule because you have the Eagles you got to deal with, you got the Ravens, and then you got the Chiefs. These are your next 3 games. This is really going to show people what you are made of. And are they going to be able to step up and, accept the challenge? I don't think they're going to go 0-3 their next 3 games. I think they could beat all 3 of these teams. I really do. I mean, they beat the Ravens already. But the Eagles, there's, some things I don't like with them right now, but I still think the Eagles are a very good team and they're one of the best teams in the NFL. But I think the Steelers could go in there and beat them. And the Chiefs, I think the Steelers could definitely beat them. And I can't wait for that game. That game is exactly 2 weeks from today. So I'm really looking forward to that matchup. But yeah, I got them at 5. They're playing good football. Then at 4, still got the Chiefs at 4. Once again, another victory that they squeaked by. It wasn't a double doink or anything, the game-winning field goal. It hit off the upright and ricocheted in. Listen, they're 12-1. All right? I just don't know what to make of them right now. Now, they keep talking about how the offense is getting close. Now, I think the offense will click when they get to the playoffs. I really do think that they're fooling us once again, where they don't play well here, and then we get to the they don't play well in the regular season. We get to the postseason, and then they flip that switch, and then they're off and running. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see them in the Super Bowl again. And I did bring this up, though. The concerns are pertaining to the offensive line. The offensive line might be a problem because Mahomes was taking some hits on Sunday against the Chargers. You do not want to see Patrick Mahomes get hurt. If he ends up getting hurt, Chiefs got no shot to do anything this year. They don't. But that's probably the one thing that I worry about. Because I do think, Isaiah Pacheco is just coming back. DeAndre Hopkins has played well for them. Travis Kelce can turn it up in the postseason like he did last year. I mean, and the defense will step up when it needs to in the postseason. They're going to get right for the playoffs, but the offensive line, I think, is an issue that they got to figure it out. But they're 12-1, and right now they're in the driver's seat to once again claim home field advantage. At 3, I got the Buffalo Bills. I mean, despite their loss to the Rams, look, Josh Allen, he had 6 touchdowns in that game, 6 total touchdowns, 3 rushing and 3 passing. He's the MVP right now. This is still a good football team. They went up against a very good Rams team, and, the Rams have a ton of playmakers on that side of the ball. Yeah, I mean, I'm a little concerned about the Bills' defense after that performance. I mean, it's not the first time that the Bills' defense got shredded this year. I mean, we saw what happened when they played the Ravens, earlier in the season. So, that's a bit of a concern. But you know what, Josh Allen and that offense, they could put up points with anybody, and they're going to have to once again when they take on the Lions in Detroit, which that could be the game of the year. I mean, Sunday, the game against the Rams, that was the game of the year. That was the best game of the weekend by far. And I thought that Packers-Lions got us off to a good start, but I looked at that as the best game of the weekend. But Rams-Bills exceeded that and more because of just how many points were scored. But yeah, I mean, look, that loss, you could point to the defense, but and also, the punt getting blocked as well, that led to 7 points. That also was a key moment in the game as well. But Josh Allen, they almost pulled it off. They almost pulled off the comeback. He was spectacular, and they're getting ready for this stretch run here. I mean, they got the division locked up, but they got to make sure that they keep this number 2 seed here. I mean, there's still an outside chance they could catch the Chiefs, but I don't really know. I don't think it's going to happen. Because I thought, if the Chargers pulled off that win, maybe. But I think the Chiefs are getting home field. It's going to come down to, right now, it looks like it's either going to be the Steelers or the Bills for the number 2 seed. And the Bills want that number 2 seed. So, we'll see what happens on Sunday when they take on the Lions. They still got the Jets to play again. And they still haven't played the Patriots. So those are 2 games that they should win. They should beat the Jets. And like I said, you got the toughest game left on your schedule in the regular season. That's against the Lions. So who knows? Maybe they hand the Lions their second loss. Because that was a matchup we got a couple years ago on Thanksgiving. The Bills won that. But it's different now. So really looking forward to that game. But yeah, I still got the Bills at 3. And then at 2, still got the Eagles. Picked up another win against the Panthers. It wasn't pretty. Jalen Hurts only had 108 yards passing, but Saquon Barkley, continues to run the football well. The defense played well when it had to. This is still a very good team. And, once they get this passing game going, it's going to be tough to stop them. Because I think that's ultimately what's going to be the difference between the Eagles winning the Super Bowl or getting to the Super Bowl or not. I mean, Saquon Barkley is not going to have a big game every single week. There's going to be a time where, it's going to be up to Jalen Hurts and the pass catchers to make plays. And I've said that. Now, I know I did bring up, you're not going to win a playoff game where your quarterback throws for barely over 100 yards. But then after the show, I said, well, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, what did he complete? Like 3 passes in a game once? Or in the NFC Championship game against the Packers. But that's because Raheem Mostert had 200 yards rushing and like 4 rushing touchdowns. If Saquon Barkley's going to do that, then you can win playoff games like that. But the Eagles need to improve this passing game. They need to they got to get it going. And they have the talent to do it. They do. They got 2 number 1 wide receivers. Now losing Dallas Goedert is tough. That's a big piece on that offense. But they got to get it going, because that could be a problem in the playoffs. If a team is shutting down Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts is going to have to make plays. And the other thing too is if the defense, is giving up points left and right. If Saquon Barkley's not a factor, if the defense is not playing well, it's going to be up to Jalen Hurts and that passing game to get it going. But again, that's hypotheticals. We got to see how some of these games play out. The Panthers. They had a chance to beat the Eagles. They did not. And the Eagles are 11-2. And look, they are still right behind the Lions for the number 1 seed. They can still get it. But right now, they're pretty much locked in at the 2. I think that's what's going to end up happening. They're going to get the 2. And then the winners of, the NFC West and the NFC South are going to get the 3 and the 4. So, yeah, no, the Eagles are at number 2. That they deserve to be there, but, there's some concerns there. And then at number 1, no surprise, is the Detroit Lions. They continue to win games. Dan Campbell is a little bit too aggressive last Thursday against the Packers, and that could definitely cost them. And that's been a talking point all week since that game happened. I mean, going forward on your own 30, I mean, yeah, if you end up getting it, you look like a genius. But if you don't look like that. So, and that did happen. Now, fortunately, the Lions still won the game. But that's what costed you in the playoff game last year against the 49ers. So, they got to be careful there. Now, again, they're a good enough team where, hey, they're going to do it and, they believe they're going to get it. But you don't want that costing your season, because that's something that if that costs them in the playoffs, Lions fans are going to lose it. And I love Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's great. But got to be smarter in certain situations. And, that's me saying that. I'm not a head coach. But it's a big risk. It's a big risk you're taking. But again, if you get it, you look like a genius. So, yeah, having said all that, though, the Lions are at number 1. And to run through the top 5 again, Steelers at 5, Chiefs at 4, Bills at 3, Eagles at 2, and then the Lions at 1. So, if you did notice, it's the same top 5 from last week. Now, I was debating on whether or not to put the Vikings in, because it's very close. I mean, we'll see how this week goes. I think there will be changes after this week, depending on what happens. But I still kept the Steelers in it. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think, though. What would your top 5 be? Let me know in the comments. And that's pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video. And as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of